shore up support from undecided voters, with both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump holding dueling events in Arizona and Nevada.
Is there any woman in this giant stadium who would like it not to be protected?
And this is just the latest on a series of reveals by the former president of how he thinks about women.
Literally, think about the women in your lives you love. This election literally is about their lives. Their lives are at stake in this election.
Elon Musk was a no-show this morning for a critical court hearing over his $1 million voter giveaway.
We will proceed to federal court, and we will address the issues there.
North Korea launched a new and more powerful missile that could potentially reach the U.S. mainland.
The overnight launch comes as U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin warns that North Korea has sent some 10,000 troops to train in eastern Russia.
We expect that these North Korean soldiers will join the fight against Ukraine in the coming days.
Israeli airstrikes pounded the Baalbek region in southern Lebanon.
This comes as U.S. officials head to the region for a renewed push to resolve the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon.
Well, we appreciate you spending some of your evening with us as we wrap up the month. We begin our hour in the Southwest. That's where both presidential candidates are focusing their energy. Former President Donald Trump is rallying in Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. That's a reliably blue state. Meantime, Vice President Kamala Harris visited Phoenix before heading to Nevada for two separate stops, focusing on courting the Latino vote. Now, her events will feature some special guests, including Jennifer Lopez and performances from two Mexican pop bands, Mana and Los Tigres del Norte. Former Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson will join Trump on the campaign trail in Arizona. The former president, though, has found himself facing criticism once again, this time over comments he made about women Wednesday night that the Harris campaign was quick to jump on.
I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them.
Listen, it actually is, I think, very offensive to women in terms of not understanding their agency, their authority, their right, and their ability to make decisions about their own lives.
Now, while the candidates continue to try and sway last-minute undecided voters, this election is already underway. You're looking there at the more than 63 million people who've cast their ballot in person or by mail by now. That is nearly 40% of all the ballots cast during the 2020 election. Now, Trump asked the crowd at his rally Thursday in New Mexico about that.
Who's voted? Okay, who is going to vote? That's good. Well, the people that have voted, if you voted against me, shame on you.
All right, for more on all of this, we're going to bring in CBS News political reporter Zach Hudak is joining us from our D.C. bureau. Zach, as we keep saying, this election is already happening. It's underway as we speak. And the candidates in the last 24, 48 hours or so appear to be throwing insults in both directions. Any proof from your point of view that it's motivating people to the polls?
Errol, it is too early to tell, but what we are seeing is that these insults are very strategic, and this is to be expected at this stage in the campaign. There is so little time left, 5 days until Election Day, that any small change could have an impact, particularly in states like Pennsylvania, where the last two cycles were decided there by less than 100,000 voters. So when we see the Harris campaign seize on former President Trump's comments about women the other night, they are thinking about all of the women in the Philadelphia suburbs who they are going to need to come out for them and who they're hoping have a stake in all of this over reproductive rights. At the same time, when we see VP Harris seize on some of the inflammatory comments made about Latinos at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally over the weekend, that is because of the growing Latino population in Pennsylvania. We've seen that population more than double, nearly triple over the last 20 years. So there's a lot of strategy going into these attacks, but it's a little bit too early to tell what kind of an impact they're going to have.
And it's an important detail for our viewers to remember, which is that women outvote men every single presidential election. Both campaigns vying for women's votes right now. Who is in a stronger position?
VP Harris is in a much stronger position with women. She is up by about 12 points, according to our latest CBS poll released over the weekend. Now, that is the opposite of what's happening with men. Former President Trump is up by about 9 points with them. And what we're seeing is that he is continuing to double down on men and focus his rhetoric toward them. It's something that VP Harris is referred to as a bromance he's having with his supporters. Meanwhile, she has been focused on trying to actually bring over some Republicans and has still continued to double down on women and on reproductive rights. That's an issue that the Harris campaign thinks is a big winner for them. They can tell women, hey, take a look at what Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominees have done to your reproductive rights in this country.
And the Harris team also pushing the topic of healthcare in general. There has been some back and forth, in fact, between the vice president and the Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Let's just play a sampling of what Harris said earlier on Thursday.
It has been a part of Donald Trump's agenda for a very long time. He has made dozens of attempts to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And now we have further validation of that agenda from his supporter, the Speaker of the House.
Help us understand what Harris is referring to there.
Errol, I think this is yet another example of any misstep that any candidate makes at this stage is going to be seized on by the opposition. So it appears that Mike Johnson did not actually intend to suggest, or at least that's what he says, that he would be targeting the Affordable Care Act if Trump were to win and Republicans were to have a majority in Congress. However, the reality of the situation is about 2/3 of Americans support the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. So it is electorally just not very feasible for him to do that. Too many of his Republican House members would have constituents who are upset about it. So that's very unlikely. But that truly is another example of what you and I have been talking about. We are at the point in the campaign where any misstep, any gaffe will be seized on by the opposition to the maximum effect.
Yeah, that's right. Zach Hudak with the latest. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Errol.
There's another big election-related headline that we want to bring you. The suspect behind ballot box arson attacks in the Northwest could strike again, and that's according to state and federal officials. But they also admit there's no clear motive. Hundreds of ballots, as you may remember, were either damaged or destroyed in Vancouver, Washington, while 3 ballots were damaged in Portland. CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanger is covering the latest on this for us. And Nicole, what's also intriguing is that officials do have a sense of who the suspect is, but they haven't publicly ID'd him. What do we know about who it may be?
Yeah, Errol, investigators are searching for a middle-aged white male driving a black or dark gray Volvo that was seen in these surveillance images moments before the drop box caught fire in Portland. Complicating this investigation, Portland police say the license plate number of that car is unknown, but investigators are picking up on some clues, and they believe that the suspect here may actually have metalworking experience. That's because there was detailed welding found on the incendiary devices used to set both drop boxes on fire. Police said it's very possible the suspect strikes again. Now, a law enforcement source told CBS News those incendiary devices, their casings, were marked with the words "Free Gaza." But according to that source, it's unclear if the suspect here is a pro-Palestinian sympathizer or just trying to stoke controversy. And as this investigation continues, the FBI has taken both those devices 2,000 miles east to their forensic laboratory that's in Huntsville, Alabama, for further analysis.
And you wonder how many ballots exactly were either damaged or destroyed, and what election officials can do in response to what they say is an ongoing threat.
Yeah, Errol, in Portland, just 3 ballots were damaged. In Washington state, that number is 494 ballots that were damaged. There's also an unknown number that were completely destroyed. That's because officials were left with just a pile of ash at the bottom of that drop box. But some good news here. Of those 494 ballots recovered from inside the drop box in Washington, election officials there told us they've already identified nearly every one of those voters. And most of those voters have already requested a new ballot, really following through on their civic duty. For the rest, officials are reaching out to them directly to send them replacement ballots. As for security, take a listen to Greg Kimsey. He's the county auditor for Clark County.
We are now encouraging voters to deposit the ballot before 5:30 p.m. in the ballot drop boxes If a ballot's deposited in a ballot drop box before 5:30, that ballot will be received here in the elections office that same day. In addition, beginning yesterday afternoon, we have what we're referring to as ballot drop box observers at each of the ballot drop boxes. They're there 24 hours a day. Those individuals have a sole task, only one responsibility, and that is if they see something they think is suspicious, to call 911.
And Errol, anyone who's concerned about their ballot being destroyed out there in Washington and Clark County, they can check their status online at votewa.gov and also request a replacement ballot there.
Very good advice, Nicole Skanger, across all of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And here's your open invite to watch Election Night with the CBS News team, live from our election headquarters here in New York, and with our teams and correspondents spread out across the country. Join us for all-day coverage here on CBS News 24/7. Now, the Philadelphia lawsuit over Elon Musk's $1 million voter giveaway is moving to federal court. The Pennsylvania state judge made the decision at a hearing Thursday where one key player was missing from the proceedings. CBS Philadelphia reporter Josh Sanders reports. Josh?
Billionaire Elon Musk was a no-show in court this morning. Late last night, his lawyers filed with the federal U.S. District Court in Philadelphia asking for the case to be moved under federal jurisdiction, and a federal judge agreed to that. This morning, a Philadelphia judge then continued the matter. The Philadelphia District Attorney's civil lawsuit claims Musk and his super PAC are running an illegal lottery in Philadelphia and throughout the Commonwealth. The DA is suing to prevent the PAC run by Musk from giving away $1 million a day to registered voters in swing states. Musk camp says their goal is to get voters in swing states to pledge support of the Constitution, freedom of speech, and the right to bear arms. Musk is a staunch supporter of former President Donald Trump. DA Larry Krasner's lawyers said Musk should be sanctioned for not appearing in the hearing. The judge reserved any decision on that until it's clear whether the case will play out in federal or state court. Musk's lawyers said the billionaire is a busy man and can't just materialize. The case has been assigned to U.S. District Judge Gerald Papert, a Republican former Pennsylvania Attorney General appointed to the federal bench by former President Barack Obama. All of this happening as both the Trump and Harris campaigns are hoping to win over Pennsylvania on their way to the White House. Josh Sanders, CBS News, Philadelphia.
All right, still to come for you all this hour. North Korea test launches a new and improved ballistic missile as the U.S. warns the country is getting involved with Russia's war in Ukraine. What this means for tensions between the North and Washington. Plus, stressing about the election. One survey says you are not alone. I'll speak with a psychiatrist about ways you can manage your anxiety, okay? Get ready to relax. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. That's right.
Let me see if you can find me.
I want to make sure that my voice is heard, but also that I lift up other voices.
You can't write a better script.
Yeah, boy! It's gonna be a ride.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
How fast do you think you were going? 195 miles an hour. This is incredible.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
Not close.
Is this brain surgery without a knife?
It is.
What risk do these children pose to Russia?
I'm not sure the world is prepared for this change.
Definitely not.
Who's the best coach in college football today?
Let me see a mirror.
It's time for the CBS News original, 60 Minutes. Sundays on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more. Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
I'm a voracious consumer of information and constantly curious. I want to know
the basic facts of every issue and to press into the heart of the matter. Information is the currency of democracy, and that's what we bring to the table every Sunday.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone,
This could happen to anybody.
and sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back. North Korea is sending a warning to its enemies with the highest and longest test of an intercontinental ballistic missile ever. This is the first time in almost a year the North has launched a missile designed to threaten the U.S. mainland. The move comes as North Korea further inflames tensions with the West by sending thousands of troops to help Russia's war against Ukraine. Earlier at a meeting with his South Korean counterpart in Washington, Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke about the North's support of Vladimir Putin.
We now assess that there are some 10,000 North Korean soldiers in total in Russia. Russia has been training DPRK soldiers in artillery, UAVs, basic infantry operations, including trench clearing, indicating that they fully intend to use these forces in frontline operations.
CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins us now with more from the Pentagon. Charlie, this seems like something North Korea does every few years, but how significant is this latest launch considering its power, its distance, and its deployment of troops in Russia potentially to help in Ukraine?
Yeah, well, Errol, as you said, this is the longest distance and longest duration of any North Korean missile yet. Japanese and South Korean authorities were tracking it. They showed it was launched vertically, almost straight up, so it wouldn't reach any territories when it came down. Flew for 86 minutes to an altitude of more than 4,300 miles. That far exceeds previous launches. The last test was actually back in December. As you said, it happens regularly, frequently. They've been gaining in reach, but some analysts believe they might be trying to develop a weapon that can carry a larger warhead. As always, as you pointed out, with North Korea, you have to look at the timing, right? So not only is a South Korean delegation here in D.C., they were meeting at the Pentagon, here at the Pentagon yesterday, and the State Department today, but it's no coincidence this launch took place within days of the U.S. elections.
When it comes to North Korea sending troops to Russia to potentially help in its war in Ukraine, is it right to call that a type of game changer? Because analysts I've been speaking with have described it as something that China will have at least been aware of and tacitly approved. And as such, it would be a real counterbalance to Western force. What do you make of it?
Well, officials here, South Korean and American officials, say they are leaning on China to do something. They're the only country with any sort of leverage.
Right.
But defense officials that I've spoken to here said, in terms of what sort of impact or game changer, depends on what they're there to do. It's not a lot in terms of numbers. We pointed that out. It's been pointed out that Russians lose 1,200 casualties in one bad day. But we have been told they've been suited up with Russian uniforms. They're carrying Russian equipment and weapons, and they're headed to the Kursk Oblast. And that's the area where the Ukrainians seized Russian territory over the summer. So Secretary of State Antony Blinken said today, and this is a number, he said 8,000 are already in the Kursk Oblast. That's a lot more than were previously estimated. He said they received training on Russian artillery, drones, and trench clearing. The defense secretary says he believes they are preparing for combat roles. The other question, this is a big one, is this just 10,000 troops or the first 10,000 troops? Because one thing North Korea has got plenty of is manpower, 1.2 million in a standing army. That's the second largest army in the world.
And so considering what you've just laid out, that they are positioned there for war, there very well could be North Korean deaths in Ukraine defending Russia. How is the U.S. and allies in Europe responding to these dual actions from North Korea?
Well, the defense secretary said there will be North Korean deaths if they fight. First of all, both the United States and South Korea have called on China to step in, as I mentioned, saying that kind of missile development, first of all, threatens the whole region, and it's about the only country that holds some influence. I mean, they've said today that the launch violates all kind of UN Security Council resolutions. Not that that matters. The U.S. and a number of allies have requested a Security Council meeting on Monday, but that hasn't held much sway, as you know, in the past. As for the North Korean troops, look, both the state and the Pentagon warned if they go in there to fight, they will be treated as co-belligerents. The Ukrainians can use whatever weaponry they've been provided with, and that includes U.S. weapons. Austin said the North Korean soldiers won't last long, is how he put it. And Blinken said they're entering Putin's war that is a meat grinder of his own making.
All right, Charlie D'Agata with an eye-opener of a report there. Charlie, thank you.
Thanks, Errol.
At this moment, northern Israel is recovering after Hezbollah launched deadly airstrikes from Lebanon Thursday. This comes as U.S. officials travel to the region in an effort to ease rising tensions between these two countries. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams brings us the latest.
A series of barrages fired from Lebanon hit northern Israel today, killing 7 people. They're the deadliest strikes to hit Israel since its military invaded southern Lebanon earlier this month. It follows Israeli airstrikes in the Baalbek region in Lebanon yesterday, after Israel issued an evacuation warning to residents the day before. Lebanon's health ministry said at least 19 people were killed. Israel says it's targeting the militant group Hezbollah. Meanwhile, the head of the United Nations agency that helps Palestinian refugees has said that new Israeli laws passed this week will lead to more deaths in the Gaza Strip. On Monday, Israel's parliament voted to bar the agency, known as UNRWA, from operating inside Israel. Israel is a longtime critic of UNRWA and alleges that it's been infiltrated by Hamas in Gaza. Following a UN investigation, in August, the agency dismissed 9 staff members accused of taking part in the October 7th attacks. For context, UNRWA says it employs around 13,000 people in Gaza. The US said it is deeply concerned by the new legislation. Back to you.
All right, Holly Williams, thank you for that. All right, listen to this. If you are stressed about the election, it's election day next week. Look, you're not alone. 69% of adults said the presidential election was a significant source of anxiety. And as you see on your screen, this data, according to the American Psychological Association's Stress in America poll, by the way, these numbers are up 1% from 2020 and 17% from 2016. But don't worry, Dr. Sue Varma is here. She talks about how to overcome these feelings of stress in her book, Practical Optimism, the Art, Science, and Practice of Exceptional Well-Being. And I am so glad that she's joining us in studio today to talk about this, because the top question you'll hear from people is how can they deal with the stats that we've just shown, this pervasive sense of anxiety about the election?
Yes, great question. And I think that we have to first recognize what is the source of the anxiety. Yeah. Is it the election and the outcome itself, or all of the issues that are going to affect us, from climate change and how that's going to be dealt with, to inflation, to jobs, to health care? So really figure out, how does this pertain to you, right? So there's global issues, but on a day-to-day basis, what does this mean and how can you prepare? And that's a big part of when we're dealing with anxiety. Breaking it down into productive anxiety, which is all the things that you can do and need to line up concretely in the real world around you. And then unproductive anxiety is all the rumination, the negative thoughts that are keeping you up at night, and being aware of what's the difference? What am I able to be an agent of change in my life for? And what do I have to accept and start preparing for?
I really appreciate that you make that distinction, because it's something I often find sharing with friends and family about stress, about the world and how it is. What can you control today in your own bubble.
Absolutely.
For people who might be watching this program and they want to read newspapers and they're always, looking at information through their feeds, what is the balance between a healthy consumption of global events, which can be dire sometimes, and limiting that for your own health?
Yes, and I always say, ask yourself one key question when you're feeling really stressed out.
Yeah.
Is this a problem to be solved or a truth to be accepted? And that will help guide you into what am I doing? What am I chasing? Am I a passive consumer of this information? Or am I searching for something that's going to materially and concretely change the outcome of what's going on? And what is it that I can do? And I think that a lot of us are doom scrolling, and what we're doing is what's called engaging in confirmation bias. We already believe in something, and we're looking for something that's going to confirm the beliefs that we already have. And so the algorithm continues to push that. And then we end up going down these rabbit holes of a lot of hateful exchanges with strangers, right? Like,
why do we do that? Because I have to convince my mother to stop arguing with people on Facebook. She's like,
people.
but I need to tell them. I'm like, why? Why do people continue to engage with stuff that infuriates them?
It's because we feel so helpless, right? And it's this feeling of, I want to make a change, and sometimes that's just changing your mind. And I think that what I'm seeing is that it's really affecting our relationships to the point that we're avoiding people. And we really need to keep in mind that we're also going through a loneliness crisis, right? So we can't cut people off. Like, we may have distanced ourselves off from people and engaged in a lot. Like, there's a lot of group chats that are getting fired up. And I say, really limit that and say, hey, let's regroup after the election. Let's limit the conversations that we're having about these really heated topics that we're never going to see eye to eye with. And be very intentional. What is the point of my conversation? Am I trying to change their mind? Am I capable of changing their mind? How does that affect the outcome? And what do I want? Do I want to preserve a relationship with this person? And if that's the case, how do I back off?
And just to also provide our viewers with some news they can use, what is the difference? How do we identify in ourselves the difference between doom scrolling and maybe engaging in things that aren't healthy and an actual anxiety or depression disorder? When do we know it's serious?
So in order for someone to qualify for having a disorder, it has to cause impairment in their life or real struggle where, like, because of the doom scrolling, because of what's happening and the fear, they're not able to keep up with day-to-day obligations, right? Are they late to work because of it? Are they doom scrolling during the day? Are they, like, firing up the chats with angry comments and people? Is this affecting their sleep? A lot of times people will say, I don't have any anxiety. I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, how do you sleep? They're like, oh, not so good. And I'm like, sleep is a window into your mental health. It tells me so much. Are you having trouble falling asleep? Are you waking up in the middle of the night, checking your phone? Not to do that. And really create safe spaces and oasis moments in your day where you shut off, and maybe an hour before bedtime, and you're like, absolutely not. I am not checking my phone. And maybe 20, 30 minutes in the morning if you have that luxury, or wake up earlier than when you actually need to be awake so you can have 5 minutes of meditation, quiet time, enjoy a cup of coffee, get back in nature, exercise, distraction, fun, play, music, dancing.
I implore all of, I do all those things.
I love that.
So this is Practical Advice. Practical Optimism is the book. In a couple words, what do you do to relax, to chill?
Meditate and music.
There you go. Dr. Sue Farmer, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we've got more coming up for you. Comments Donald Trump made about women on the campaign trail, they're sparking some controversy. Coming up next, we'll examine how those remarks could shape the election and each campaign's messaging strategy for a key voting bloc. You're streaming The Daily Report.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It was genocide, a deliberate effort by the United States government to eliminate the food source that was relied upon by Native American tribes.
American bison were slaughtered and Native Americans displaced.
And that's how tribes were subjugated to reservations and our lands were taken.
But now, through conservation efforts at Yellowstone,
Buffalo provided everything that we needed. Now they need help.
a herd grows.
We need to step up and help them.
And a culture is reborn.
When the buffalo return and come back, that's when our tribe will begin to heal.
Yellowstone Bison Revival, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Oh, wow. Look at this.
Let 60 Minutes take you on a private tour of the National Archives.
So there may be treasures like this buried in boxes.
Historical secrets from America's past.
So this is original from 1778?
this case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original, 48 Hours, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Here we go. Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
The grief of losing a child is immense. You can't breathe.
After decades of the war on drugs, things have only gotten worse.
Every shipment of fentanyl is a ticking time bomb.
50 times more powerful than heroin.
CBS Reports goes deep into Mexico.
What is your role in the Sinaloa cartel?
To find out why the cartels keep getting stronger and wealthier.
This is a war, but we're not fighting it. Our citizens are dying.
Funding Cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A warm welcome back to the Daily Report. I'm Errol Barnett. Here are some additions to our top stories for you. The Federal Reserve's preferred inflation measure, that's the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, dropped to 2.1% last month. That number's moving closer to the Fed's goal of a 2% annual rate. According to Wall Street economists, this could signal more rate cuts ahead this year. Russia is pushing for Google to lift its block on Russian TV channels broadcasting on YouTube. Google tightened its policies regarding Russian content following the invasion of Ukraine, blocking more than 1,000 channels and more than 5 million videos. A Russian court has fined Google, get this, $20 decillion. That's a 20 followed by 33 zeros. It's also exponentially more than the total global GDP of $110 trillion. Ford is halting production of its F-150 Lightning electric pickup truck for 6 weeks. This is a big deal. The company says it's adjusting production for an optimal mix of sales growth and profitability. Ford has been scaling back its EV plans, instead putting more resources into hybrid vehicles. All right, back on the campaign trail for you. Polling still shows the election, it's effectively a toss-up between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. Both candidates are working Thursday to swing voters in the Southwest battleground states of Arizona and Nevada. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. He's the man with all the data and all the maps. Just give us your sense of the race in the battleground states and what the likelihood may be that either candidate may overperform what polls currently suggest.
Hey, Errol, we're running out of ways to say close, tight, even, right? Either candidate can win. But you mentioned the battleground since they're in Arizona. I'm going to give you a little bit of a viewer's guide to answer your question. Let me dive into Arizona for that. So in this state, which I will tell you, our polling has this effectively even, right? It's within the margin of error. When you look at the 2020 race, it was really, really close as well. And everybody's eyes are going to be in particular on Phoenix, Arizona, in particular on Maricopa County. So when you watch us on election night, we'll be waiting for votes there. We'll be seeing which way that breaks. Look how close it was in 2020. And remember, there's a lot of voters there. There's 2 million voters. And in the city alone, it's a lot of more voters than there are in a lot of states, right? So there's a lot going on here. In fact, if I show you, you asked me about the Latino vote. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you on the map here what it looks like even within Phoenix and around. We're going to be doing these deep dives on election night because the darker shading here are more precincts with more Latino voters, right? Here in the central part of Phoenix, not so much as you get out to Scottsdale, more down here south, around the 10 there. Now, what we were going to see is what does turnout look like there, number one? And number two, can Kamala Harris build a little bit on Joe Biden's margins there? She'll need to. If she can't, then that'll bode very well for Donald Trump. So that's how the current events, the things you're seeing about Latino voters, might play out very specifically in a battleground state, Errol.
Yeah, and it's hard to predict. I mean, I went to high school under the P in your map, Westview High School there in the West Valley of Phoenix, home of the Knights.
There you go.
You know, Hispanic voters are not monolithic. They differ on age, on where they may be from, and what their voting trends are historically. I'm wondering what you're looking out for in these next few days. What are you curious to see as it relates to trend lines and projections and predictions?
Well, the biggest thing is going to be turnout. And what I mean by that specifically is that there are counties around the country. You mentioned Nevada earlier in the report, and that's another good example. So I'll use this map like this. In Nevada, Democrats do well. Frankly, they win 2 counties, but one of them is the biggest. It's Clark County. It's Las Vegas, right? But I'm going to be looking to see what the numbers are there. Watch this. If I turn the state on an axis and you see the relative number of votes being cast with the higher bars, there are obviously more. The whole ball game in many ways is this million votes in Las Vegas. What turnout means in this election is that Democrats really have to run that up in the places they do well, in cities, in close-in suburbs. That's what I'm looking for, to see if those numbers hit the kinds of things that Joe Biden had. Because if they fall short of that, then Donald Trump, these patterns in smaller areas, smaller counties, start to add up Republican votes, and that will bode much better for him, Errol.
Anthony, as a fellow data geek, I love the 3D view of the turnout because it helps you understand land doesn't vote, people do, and density matters when we look at all of this come election day. We'll be staying close to you, Anthony. Thanks so much.
Thank you
for joining us today. Now we want to get you back to the latest controversy surrounding those remarks by former President Donald Trump Wednesday night about women.
They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them.
The Harris campaign was quick to seize on that remark and that moment. The vice president Thursday calling the remarks offensive. Her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, referenced the comment Thursday in Pennsylvania while discussing reproductive rights.
He said, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. That's how this guy's lived his life. That's why he was on the Access Hollywood tape, and that's why he ended up in court, because that's what he thinks about.
For more analysis, let's bring in politics reporter at Semaphore, Shelby Talcott. She joins us from our Washington bureau. Shelby, this is interesting because there's already a fairly wide gender divide this election between the candidates. Are you sensing that it's closing at all?
Not really. And again, we're not really going to know until after the presidential election, but it does seem clear to me that both campaigns have decided that they are going to focus on their main base. With Kamala Harris's campaign, that means that they're focusing on women. With Donald Trump's campaign, it means that they're focusing on men. And when I talk to both campaigns, they argue, well, yeah, sure, these are our core base, but we are targeting some of those other folks. But in all of the public events and comments that are made and decision-making that goes on with Donald Trump going on some of these podcasts, you can sort of tell that that's where the crux of their focus is with less than a week out.
And what's fascinating to me is that within a day of President Biden making the garbage comment, we see former President Donald Trump in a vest showing up next to a Trump emblazoned garbage truck, and within a day of, Harris making gaffes, within a day of Trump saying these remarks, the Harris campaign has ads out saying that he wants to, he's bad for women. Is any of this effective, though, when it comes to making a closing argument and convincing the undecideds? If the bases are already in their corners, what difference does this make?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The vast majority of voters at this point in the presidential election have made up their minds. And when I have talked to undecided voters, oftentimes they already know who Donald Trump is and the things he has said. And the big undecided voter question is, what are you going to do with the economy? What are you going to do about crime? What are you going to do about the topics that, by and large, the American people are really concerned about? So whether or not these sort of really quick news cycles that we're seeing over the past few days end up influencing voters, I'm not 100% convinced.
And what's really interesting when we discuss women and their preferences, and as you mentioned, women already know who Donald Trump is, you know, despite most women supporting Harris, white American voters, women, support Trump by a pretty large margin. Why is that?
Well, listen, this is historic, right? They did that in the past elections,
right,
and pollsters believe that they are largely following this line. And when I talk to Donald Trump's campaign, they argue that's because these women are less focused on things like abortion. They're more focused on family. They're more focused on how am I going to feed my kids? What is the price of groceries? And those are sort of the women that Donald Trump is getting in this presidential election. And it is a group that Kamala Harris's team is trying to get, but it might be an uphill battle for them.
So considering that, on abortion and reproductive rights, what is the Trump messaging strategy? Because now you see Donald Trump saying he's going to protect the, women's rights, whether they like it or not. But you're suggesting that if he actually stuck to other issues, he would court the women who are already on his side.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump's campaign throughout this entire presidential cycle has not wanted to focus on the issue of abortion. They recognize that it is an issue that helps Democrats more than it helps them. Now, Donald Trump has come out and addressed the topic, and he believes that because he has addressed it, it should be a non-issue. That's probably not going to be the case, but if they had it their way, they would not be talking about abortion.
All right, a couple of days ago, as I say, the election is happening now all around us. Shelby Talcott, thanks for helping us understand it. All right, still to come for you all. CBS News polls show climate change is a top voting issue among the Latino community. We'll speak to a journalist who spent some time with Latino voting advocates and voters in Phoenix ahead of Election Day. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
At least 158 people have died in flash floods in Spain. That's according to rescuers and state-run media. At least 155 of the deaths were in Valencia, located in the eastern part of the country. We've really seen these numbers explode in just the past 24 hours. Meteorologists say parts of the city received more than a year's worth of rainfall in just 8 hours. We have some footage of this as well. You can see the damage is just widespread. You've got debris strewn throughout neighborhoods, cars that were swept away and now piled on top of each other. Roughly 1,000 Spanish soldiers have been deployed to look for survivors and recover victims. And indeed, climate change and the environment have emerged as a top issue for young voters this election. A recent poll by the Environmental Voter Project, in fact, found 40% of voters aged 18 to 34 say they will only support a candidate who prioritizes climate change. The voting bloc says this is, quote, a deal breaker. The poll also shows 78% of young voters are extremely or very motivated by climate change to vote. And CBS News polling shows while the economy is the biggest issue for Latino voters, more than half of Latinos cite climate change as a major factor in their choice for president. For more on this, I'm joined by journalist Kelly McEvers, who's reporting on behalf of Capital and Maine. She's the founding host of NPR's Embedded podcast, which we encourage folks to listen to. Kelly, because you spent 3 days in Phoenix last week following some get out the vote efforts, specifically in Latino communities. What did you see? What did you experience?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I went to Phoenix actually and to Tucson, right? The two big counties in Arizona, if you're looking at the numbers for this upcoming election, which we just heard is going to be very, very, very close in this battleground state. And yes, I met lots of canvassers, people going door to door. In fact, I worked with some folks from the League of Conservation Voters, and they said that on that one given day, there were some 900 canvassers working all around the country in battleground states like Arizona. You've got folks going door to door, talking to voters, to registered voters about the climate. And why are they doing that? Well, this is a place where Phoenix, Arizona alone saw 113 consecutive days this year over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Mm-hmm. This has been a place that is so hot. In fact, when I was there just last week, we're talking late October, and it was about to approach 100 degrees on this canvassing day. Of course, the canvassers told me, that's no big deal. You should have been here in the summer, but it was hot. It's really, really hot. And they say that that is something that they talk about with voters, of course, right. The heat, the changing climate and what that means.
You know, as I mentioned earlier, I went to high school out in Phoenix. My mom is still a resident out there, have many friends. And so people know how to live with this heat. But certainly, the temperatures going beyond 120 is a life and death issue. If the power goes out and you don't have air conditioning, you can die. You can burn on the ground. What specifically did voters tell you, though, about their concerns about the climate and how it might impact their votes?
You know, what's interesting is I went out with a couple different groups of canvassers who were canvassing for national candidates, Kamala Harris, U.S. Senate candidate Ruben Gallego. They were campaigning for Democrats because, you know, in their minds, Democrats support the climate issues that they find to be important. But then I also went out with canvassers who were talking about local issues, right? The Corporation Commission, the body that regulates the utilities, right? These are things that are really on voters' minds, on top of their minds. How much does it cost to cool my house when it's over 100 degrees for so many days in a row? And like you said, approaching temperatures of 120 where it gets to be so unhealthy. That is something that's really important to voters. Who is going to be in the state legislature? This is something that people were talking about with voters as well as they went door to door, because they know that these are people that are making, you know, on the ground decisions about how to invest invest in neighborhoods. You know, there are Latino neighborhoods in certain parts of Phoenix that can be up to 5 degrees hotter, I was told, by some of these organizing groups, right? Because these are neighborhoods that haven't been invested in as heavily. So they lack parks, they lack greenery, right? There's more concrete. It's hotter. You know, somebody just going from work to the bus stop, I was told, right, can be in real danger on these kinds of hot days. So this is the kind of thing that they're talking to voters about.
Well, Kelly McEvers, thanks for sharing with us what you learned. And people should know, Phoenix, I think, is the 6th largest city in the country, and it's still growing. Folks are still moving there. It becomes even more crucial to understand it. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
And it is no trick. Parts of the country are seeing some record high temperatures this Halloween. Here on the East Coast, in fact, temperatures stayed in the mid and high 70s throughout the day. I can confirm that. And in the South, some people even saw temperatures in the low 80s. CBS News 24/7 anchor and national correspondent Lana Zak has been enjoying the Halloween festivities. Can you believe it? Around New York City. What an assignment. And you're in costume. Lana, how does this year's Halloween compare to previous years? And how's everyone enjoying themselves out there?
Well, when you're talking about the heat, Errol, the reality of climate change is felt out on the streets. But on an evening like tonight, when everybody is decked out in their Halloween finest, they're actually telling me that they're excited not to have to don coats and cover up all of their wonderful costumes. And we see the wonderful costumes. They are definitely here. But when we're talking about the heat, really extreme temperatures out here in the Northeast, we're talking about 10 degrees above average in many places, Louisville, Atlanta. When we were talking about Boston, they were looking at about 25 degrees above average there, up in the 80s for Boston at Halloween. Here in New York City, I can tell you, I'm actually a little bit sweaty out here on the just standing here out on the street talking to people, and you won't even believe this, Errol, because you're a kid from Arizona, so you never had to deal with the problem of putting a coat over your costume like I did when I was out in Iowa. But the kids here in New York don't seem to understand what a tragedy that is, because they were telling me actually that they think it's too hot for Halloween, that some of their candy is getting a little too melted. How do you guys feel about how warm it is?
Tragic.
Yeah?
It's so nice and warm, but I'm boiling.
Boiling, she says.
Trust the kids.
Are you guys having a good Halloween?
Yeah.
Thanks for the kids and the costumes, and you look great. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Oh, Errol,
we'll see you next time.
I love your costume, too.
You all
Happy
have a
Halloween.
good evening. That was a great hit. And we're going to keep the Halloween vibes going after the break. Which states have gotten in the spooky spirit the most this year? The answer might surprise you. This is the Daily Report.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now. We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are. Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
but with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today. I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
World Series is over, and that's because the Los Angeles Dodgers are now the new World Series champions. As you probably know by now, the Dodgers clinched the win Wednesday in Game 5 of the best-of-7 series, and it was a great series. The team initially fell behind 5-0 against the New York Yankees, but turned it around to a 7-6 victory. Now, it's the main event of spooky season, right? Halloween. And while millions of Americans nationwide are celebrating with costumes, candy, and scares, one state takes the top spot for the most Halloween spirit. Can you guess what it is? Here it is. New Hampshire. Our data team crunched the numbers, taking into account the number of spirit Halloween stores, haunted houses, horror movie filming locations, and more. So per capita, New Hampshire had the most spirit Halloween stores and the most haunted houses. But those looking for the ultimate scare might want to try Wyoming. Okay, you don't see it here because it ranked 29th overall on our list, but emerged as the most haunted state with more than 13 haunted sites per 100,000 people. Now you know, something to brag about to your friends. Here's some stories we're covering for you in our next hour. With just a few days left until Election Day, former President Trump and Vice President Harris are rallying across states as millions of Americans have already cast their ballots. We'll check in on the status of their campaigns. Plus, Elon Musk is a no-show in court over his $1 million giveaway, where the case stems now. You're streaming CBS News 24/7.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that? Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
Have you learned?
What's your response?